President Tayyip Erdogan of Turkey, who took the country and turned it into an authoritarian regime when it was formerly a democracy, decided to come to America and visit President Donald Trump. And what he did, or what his armed thugs did more accurately, was import some of the authoritarian tactics that he's using in Turkey to America. So they decided to attack peaceful protesters who did not like the arrival of Tayyip Erdogan. So the New York Times explains supporters of President Recep Tayyip Erdogan of Turkey, including his government security forces and several armed individuals, violently charged a group of protesters outside the Turkish ambassador's residence here on Tuesday night in what the police characterized as a brutal attack. 11 people were injured, including a police officer, and 9 were taken to a hospital. The Metropolitan Police Chief Peter Newsham said at a news conference on Wednesday. 2 Secret Service agents were also assaulted in the melee, according to a federal law enforcement official. The State Department condemned the attack as an assault on free speech and warned Turkey that the action would not be tolerated. "We are communicating our concern to the Turkish government in the strongest possible terms," said Heather Nert, a State Department spokeswoman. The confrontation came after President Trump welcomed Mr. Erdogan to the White House on Tuesday and praised him as a stalwart ally in the battle against Islamic extremism. Mr. Trump did not speak of Mr. Erdogan's authoritarian crackdown on his own people. The White House has thus far been silent on the episode. Sean Spicer, the White House press secretary, referred reporters to the State Department and declined to comment further. The Turkish embassy released the statement late Wednesday that contradicted United States officials and video evidence and blamed the demonstrators who, it said, had been aggressively provoking Turkish-American citizens who had peacefully assembled to greet the president. The president's supporters and security forces were reacting in self-defense, the statement said. That's bullshit. The episode was not the first time that Turkish security forces have ignited violence in the American capital. The police and members of Mr. Erdogan's security team clashed with demonstrators last year outside the Brookings Institution, where Mr. Erdogan was giving a speech. Brookings wrote on the website that his bodyguards had behaved unacceptably. They roughed up protesters outside the building and tried to drag away undesired journalists, an approach typical of the Russians or Chinese. So when I heard about the story, I was outraged. You don't get to come to America and import the authoritarian tactics that you use in Turkey. You don't get to do that. I don't care who you are. If you just solidified the fact that Turkey is an authoritarian regime, I don't care how powerful you think you are, you don't get to do that here. In America, we treat protesters with respect. And just to kind of let you know how much disdain Erdogan has for opposition, one of the individuals in his administration had to go on paid leave because they kicked a protester. Now, I don't know if this protester was also a journalist, but literally, they were rewarded. They were sent on paid medical leave because they kicked a protester. And the guy who did it, one of Erdogan's armed thugs, hurt his foot. So rather than reprimanding him and punishing him for assaulting a protester, violently so, you rewarded him with medical leave, a paid vacation. So this is what we're dealing with here. This is someone who is an authoritarian strongman who took Turkey and turned it into an authoritarian regime. I mean, after they recently held a referendum where Tayyip Erdogan consolidated his power, I don't know how you can still call Turkey a democracy with a straight face, because it's anything but a democracy at this point. And Turkey has been sliding towards authoritarianism little by little. What is really disappointing to me is that in Turkey, Erdogan still does have a relatively large portion of support, but the left-wing party in Turkey, because AKP, which is Erdogan's party, is a right-wing party, the left-wing party, they're kind of like Democrats, where they just can't get their act together. They don't know how to appeal to the people. And the thing about Erdogan is that his party, they tend to give things to people to encourage them to vote. So they'll go to constituents and give them groceries, for example. And my question to all of Erdogan's supporters is, why is it that he gives you just enough to remain poor? Why doesn't he actually do more to lift you out of poverty? It's not because he's trying to keep you beholden to him, right? It's not because he wants your support continuously, right? So I absolutely cannot stand Erdogan. And, every time I hear about him, all I could think is that, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, founder of Turkey, he's rolling in his grave right now. He is rolling in his grave right now, watching what Turkey has become because of Erdogan. So you don't get to come to our country and be an authoritarian and use these authoritarian tactics. So what Donald Trump needs to do right now is untuck the tail that's between his legs and actually ban Erdogan from entering the country until he apologizes or pays damages to the protesters that his armed thugs assaulted, because this is not acceptable. In a democracy, people are allowed to assemble and peacefully protest. You don't get to do that here, Erdogan. You do not get to do that here. You may be able to do that in Turkey and get away with it, but not here. So I am just as outraged with Trump as I am with Erdogan right now, because this is something that cannot stand. And it's not like this is the first time he did that. It's not like this is the first time Erdogan came to the US and started shit. So unacceptable. It's time that Trump actually takes a stand against someone who disrespected us and disrespected the values that we stand for, because he claims to be this tough guy, right? Why don't you stand up for someone who just did something that is antithetical to democracy? He assaulted American peaceful protesters, Turkish-Americans who are protesting, Kurdish-Americans who are protesting Erdogan, who has abused the Kurds, who refuses to give the Kurds their own state. So it's something that is unacceptable.
Support this podcast by joining the independent progressive media revolution today at humanistreport.com.